You planted them on purpose. That's the part nobody warns you about. Most garden mistakes are obvious. Wrong soil, wrong season, wrong watering. But some mistakes look like success for years before you understand what you actually did. The plant thrives. It spreads. It takes over. And by the time you realize the problem, it's already everywhere. Today we're covering 10 plants that gardeners invite in and then spend years trying to remove. Some are edible, some are beautiful, some are genuinely useful. All of them have a side that never gets mentioned at the nursery. Subscribe if you want honest, practical growing guides, the kind that tell you what happens after planting, not just during it. Let's start with the one sitting in almost every herb garden right now. Number 1, mint, the underground takeover artist. Mint is fast, fragrant, useful in the kitchen, and one of the easiest herbs to start. It also spreads through underground rhizomes that travel outward in every direction, sending up new shoots wherever they surface. A single plant in spring can become a solid mat, covering several square feet by fall. Those rhizomes don't respect garden borders. They go under paths, through lawn edges, and into neighboring beds. Every fragment left in the soil after pulling grows back. Here is the one critical detail. Pulling mint out of an established bed is not a one-season job. Every root fragment left behind sprouts again. The only reliable method is growing it in a buried container with the rim above soil level, so the rhizomes have nowhere to go. Fresh mint is genuinely useful. Teas, sauces, and desserts. It's one of the most productive herbs per square foot you can grow, as long as that square foot stays where you put it. The downside, once mint establishes freely in a mixed bed, removing it without disturbing everything else around it is nearly impossible. Many gardeners eventually dedicate the entire bed to mint by default. Next, a tall, cheerful flower that most gardeners don't realize is chemically suppressing every plant growing near it. Number 2, sunflower, the allelopathic neighbor. Sunflowers are productive and beautiful. They're also allelopathic. They release compounds through their roots and decomposing plant material that inhibit germination and growth in nearby plants. In your garden, vegetables and herbs planted too close may fail entirely with no obvious explanation. Here is the one critical detail. The allelopathic effect doesn't end when the plant dies. Sunflower material left to decompose in place continues releasing these compounds for weeks or months. Never compost sunflower stalks into beds where you're growing vegetables, and remove the whole plant, roots included, at the end of the season. The seeds are worth growing for, and the flowers are excellent pollinator magnets. Grow sunflowers, but give them their own dedicated space, away from anything you're actively cultivating. The downside, in a small raised bed, there may simply be no safe distance. A single large sunflower variety can affect everything within a few feet. Next, a tree that takes chemical suppression to a level that can damage your garden for years after the tree itself is gone. Number 3, black walnut, the long-range chemical weapon. Black walnut produces juglone, a compound concentrated in its roots, hulls, and leaves that is toxic to a wide range of common garden plants. Tomatoes, peppers, apples, and blueberries are particularly sensitive. Plants within the root zone show wilting and death that looks like disease, but doesn't respond to any treatment, because the cause is chemical, not cultural. Here is the one critical detail. The juglone zone doesn't disappear when the tree is cut down. Decomposing roots can maintain toxic soil levels for several years after removal. If you're gardening where a walnut was recently removed, test what grows there before investing in a new bed on that site. Walnut is worth growing if you have space. Planted far from any food garden, with tolerant species underneath. Corn, beans, squash, and black raspberries are commonly documented as tolerant. The downside, if a neighbor's walnut has roots extending into your property, there's no practical solution short of a physical barrier, and those have limits. Next, a plant that doesn't poison its neighbors. It physically displaces them, with rhizomes strong enough to crack pavement and foundation walls. Number 4, bamboo, the root that never stops. Running bamboo spreads through rhizomes that can travel several feet underground in a single season, emerging far from the original plant. These rhizomes push through cracked concrete, work under foundations, and cross into neighboring properties. Cutting the canes down only stimulates more aggressive regrowth. The rhizomes can survive in soil for years without any visible above-ground growth. Here is the one critical detail. The only way to plant running bamboo without eventually losing control is a solid HDPE rhizome barrier buried at least 18 to 24 inches deep around the entire planting area, with the rim above soil level. Even with a barrier, annual inspection is required. Clumping bamboo varieties are a far safer choice. They spread slowly and stay contained without a barrier. The downside: if running bamboo is already established on a neighboring property and sending rhizomes under your fence line, the problem is effectively uncontrollable from your side without a buried barrier along the entire shared border. Next, a climbing ornamental sold as a decorative screen that can consume a structure completely if left unmanaged for a single season. Number 5. Ivy, the wall that eats walls. English ivy attaches to surfaces using adhesive rootlets that penetrate mortar, brick, and wood. It retains moisture against walls, accelerating deterioration. On trees, it adds weight, blocks canopy light, and provides a ladder for pests. A mature ivy-covered tree is frequently a dying tree. Here is the one critical detail. Cutting ivy vines at the base does not kill the plant. The root system survives and sends up new growth. Complete removal requires cutting, treating remaining stumps, and repeated follow-up over at least 2 seasons. The adhesive rootlets left behind on walls continue holding moisture and require mechanical removal, which itself can damage the surface underneath. As a ground cover under established trees in areas where nothing else grows, ivy suppresses weeds effectively. The key is hard edging and never allowing it to climb. The downside: in mild climates, ivy is invasive in natural areas. Birds spread seeds into woodland edges where it smothers native ground flora over large areas. Next, one of the most persistent weeds in any garden, with a deep taproot that regenerates from every fragment, and a secret most gardeners don't know. Number 6. Thistle, the deep-rooted deceiver. Thistles have a taproot that can reach several feet deep, making hand-pulling ineffective. The root almost always breaks, and whatever stays in the ground grows back. The plant also produces hundreds of airborne seeds per flower head. What most gardeners don't know: thistles are edible. Young leaves stripped of spines can be cooked as a green. Peeled young stems taste similar to artichoke, a close botanical relative. Traditional foragers across Europe and the Middle East documented thistle as a famine food and seasonal staple. Here's the one critical detail: the edible window is short. Once the plant matures and spines harden, it becomes too painful and bitter to use. Young plants in early spring, before the flower stalk forms, are the target. After that, the priority is removing flower heads before they set seed. That single habit does more to reduce a thistle population than any other intervention. The downside: even diligent seed head removal doesn't eliminate an established stand. The root system regenerates for years. Next, a culinary herb that most gardeners grow happily for years, until it starts quietly reseeding itself across every bed in the garden. Number 7. Sage, the quiet reseeder. Sage is drought-tolerant, perennial, attractive to pollinators, and requires almost nothing once established. That near-zero maintenance is part of the problem. Sage allowed to flower and set seed produces viable seedlings that germinate freely in nearby soil. In good conditions, a single mature plant left to complete its flowering cycle can populate an entire bed by the following spring. Here is the one critical detail: this problem is almost entirely preventable. Cutting flower stalks before seeds set eliminates the reseeding issue. Trim hard after flowering and sage stays exactly where you put it, producing better foliage the following season. The flavor is worth protecting. Sage leaves sautéed in butter until crisp are one of the most underrated things a kitchen garden produces. Dried sage replaces store-bought entirely. The downside, in dry, well-drained sites, sage becomes woody and unproductive within a few years, if not cut back regularly. Next, a root vegetable grown as a famine food for centuries. With an underground storage system so aggressive, it turns a small test planting into a permanent fixture within one season. Number 8. Jerusalem artichoke, the tuber that never leaves. Jerusalem artichoke produces edible tubers that taste nutty and slightly sweet, raw or cooked. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and cold that kills most vegetables. It's a genuine high-value crop. The problem is that every tuber left in the soil after harvest, and there are always tubers left, produces a new plant the following season. A patch planted in spring becomes a crowded colony by fall. Any fragment missed during harvest means the colony is back the following year, regardless of what you planted there instead. Here is the one critical detail. If you plant Jerusalem artichoke in open ground without a physical barrier, treat it as a permanent decision. Grow it in a contained raised bed with solid sides, harvest aggressively every fall, and inspect again in early spring for any missed sprouts before they establish. Note that inulin, the carbohydrate in the tubers, causes significant digestive discomfort in some people. Start with a small amount before eating a full serving. The downside, once established in open ground, complete removal requires multiple seasons of aggressive digging. Many gardeners who planted it once describe years of follow-up work to reclaim the space. Next, a fruit-bearing bramble that produces one of the most useful crops in a foraging garden and spreads in 3 different directions at once. Number 9. Blackberry, the three-way spreader. Blackberries produce abundant, nutritious fruit, attract pollinators, and provide wildlife habitat. They also spread in 3 directions simultaneously. Canes arch outward and root wherever the tip touches soil. Roots send up new canes from underground runners. Birds spread seeds into any nearby open ground. A single unmanaged cane can establish multiple new plants through tip rooting alone in a single season. Here is the one critical detail. Annual pruning discipline is everything. Canes that fruited will not fruit again. Cut them to the ground immediately after harvest. New canes growing that season will fruit the following year. Training canes to a trellis prevents tip rooting and keeps the plant in its space. Without this, blackberries become impenetrable thickets within 2 to 3 seasons. Fresh blackberries picked ripe from your own canes taste dramatically better than anything purchased. The window from ripe to overripe is short. Harvest daily during peak season. The downside, established blackberry thickets are among the most difficult plants to remove. Deep root crowns, thorned canes, and regenerating fragments make it a multi-season project. Last on the list, a plant that spreads without producing a single seed and has been documented breaking through asphalt, concrete, and drainage pipe walls. Number 10. Horsetail, the prehistoric problem. Horsetail is one of the oldest plant lineages on Earth, and that evolutionary age explains exactly why it's so difficult to kill. It spreads through underground rhizomes that can reach several feet deep, far beyond any hand tool. It produces no seeds in the flowering plant sense, so it can't be stopped at the seed stage. The rhizomes are brittle and fragment easily when disturbed, meaning cultivation spreads it rather than removes it. It thrives in compacted, waterlogged, acidic soil, exactly the conditions that stress everything else. Here is the one critical detail. Horsetail's presence is a symptom as much as a problem. It preferentially colonizes soil that is compacted, poorly drained, or acidic. Improving drainage, aerating, and raising pH through liming makes conditions less favorable for horsetail over time. Physical removal requires deep, repeated digging across multiple seasons, and accepting that complete eradication is rarely achieved. The downside, of everything on this list, horsetail is the one most likely to still be in your garden long after you've stopped trying to remove it. If the soil conditions that favor it aren't addressed, it will outlast any intervention. 10 plants, all of them capable of real value, all of them capable of real damage if you plant them without understanding what happens next. The problem was never that these plants are bad. The problem is planting them without a plan and spending years dealing with the consequences. A smarter garden isn't a bigger garden. It's one where every plant does exactly what you asked it to, and nothing more. Subscribe for more honest, practical growing guides.